back in 2020, I did an epic review of 4 or 5 different economical acrylic yarns. And there was one that really stood out to me, and that was this skein of yarn, Joann's Big Twist yarn. The price point, the quality was just like, whoa. I mean, for acrylic yarn, this is going on. I liked it so much that I got it in my head in 2020 that I was going to do a temperature blanket and bought all this Big Twist yarn to make that blanket. That project fell by the wayside, but not because of the yarn. That was because of me. Recently, however, I was on the intertubes and I saw a post by someone saying that Big Twist was no longer as good as it used to be, that the quality has gone down. And I clutched my pearls. I was like, no, not Big Twist. It's my favorite acrylic yarn, even though I don't use it that often. If I'm going to use an acrylic yarn, it was gonna be Big Twist. So I bought this skein of yarn recently to compare with my older stash. So hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, give this video a thumbs up, and find out if Big Twist has become a big bust. So I feel like whenever I talk about acrylic, I know I'm going to get comments about how acrylic is evil, that it's bad for the environment, that people only want to use natural fibers. And I have to say, I understand that point of view. I really, truly do. And I can't even argue against some of it. But that being said, I do think that there is a place for acrylic in crafting life, and I think that individual crafters have to make the choices that are best for them, because there are advantages to acrylic fibers. It's hypoallergenic, it's easy care, and it's more affordable. I myself, 98% of the time, choose to use natural fibers, but there is that 2% of the time where acrylic is the best choice for my project. I look at it as harm reduction. When I can make the better, more environmental choice, I absolutely will. And then there's those times that I can't. So anyway, that being said, I just want to say that I respect whatever choices you make as a fiber lover. I respect that choice. Absolutely 100%. And I just ask that in my comments, we just stay respectful to one another. So that being said, if there is some point in the video that you want to skip to, I have timestamps down below as always. Also down in the description box are resources and materials that I think are relevant to today's video. Some of these are clearly marked affiliate links, which if you click on that link to do some shopping, I might earn a commission, and that does help support my channel so that I can keep doing this. So if you use one of my affiliate links or leave me a super thanks or buy me a coffee, it is so greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. With all that being said, let's jump into the review. Okay, so when I went to Joann's to look at Big Twist carefully, the first thing I will say is as I looked through the balls, I automatically noticed a difference with the skeins of yarn I was seeing in the store versus what Big Twist was in my stash from 2020. And so I've got both balls here for you to look at. What I noticed right away was that the yarn, it looked roughed up in a way, and it didn't look as consistent. One of the things I really liked about Big Twist from my 2020 stash was that the yarn itself was very consistent. A nice, consistent, round yarn. Then I looked at the balls of yarn at Joann's more recently, and I was kind of shocked that every ball of yarn that I looked at didn't have the same consistent round quality to it. It didn't look as lofty. There were parts of it, when I would look through the yarn, there was inconsistencies in it. So let me show you that. If I can find my end. There it is. No, I'm not gonna pull from the center. I do not pull, by the way, sidebar, I generally do not pull from the center of balls. I feel that way only leads to pain and suffering. You get yarn vomit, you get tangles, eventually the center collapses because it cannot hold, and to me, pulling from the center, that waylays pain and suffering. But anyway, right here, The thickness of the yarn, there we go, is inconsistent right there. It's a little thinner right there. It looks a little raggedy right there. It almost looks like it's been flattened. If I put them side by side, you can just find these really kind of weird rough spots in this newer yarn, as opposed to this 2020 yarn that is just nice and consistent throughout. It's very disappointing, I have to be honest. In terms of feel, I will say both the skeins in the hand feel pretty much the same. They both feel like soft yarns and pleasant to the touch. I mean, again, this is my personal preference. Some people find acrylic not to be pleasant to the touch no matter what. Something else that I did catch when I just was looking at the yarn right now, that I have not seen in any of my 2020 Big Twist yarn, although I'm not saying you would never find it. Things happen in life, and I'm not saying you would find this in every skein of Big Twist that you'd find in the store today, but notice right here, that right there, that chunk of acrylic, that is undyed acrylic. So it didn't dye there. Acrylic yarn that seems to have gotten into that single. So that's disappointing. I would be really disappointed if I was buying this yarn and I was finding like little spots of undyed fiber mixed into the skein. That would be very disappointing to me. If you recently watched my video on reading your knitting, this swatch might look familiar. This swatch may not look familiar to you yet because I haven't done the video about it, but working them both up was interesting. I have to say with my 2020 Big Twist, I found it to be pleasant. I really liked the roundness of the yarn, and again, it has a sort of this lofty quality that I always really appreciated, and I really liked, even in the knitting, it just felt like it had that like sponginess that you kind of get out of wool. Again, not wool, wool-ish, you know? For this swatch, which is a swatch I'm making on talking about recognizing increases and decreases in your knitting, that's why it looks like an hourglass, kind of that Marilyn Monroe effect. And in the hand, working with it, it was still pleasant. It still felt pretty much the same as my 2020 yarn. However, it was very interesting in that the yarn I felt was maybe a little thinner. So I went ahead and did a reps per inch test to compare my 2020 skein with my 2024 skein, and interestingly, they both came up with the same 8 reps per inch. But something weird happened when I went to go knit my actual swatch. I used the same needle size as my 2020 swatch, and it felt too loose, frankly. It was just like, this doesn't feel like the right needle size, and I went down a needle size. And what that tells me is, even though both of these yarns are listed with the same weight and the same needle recommendations, I think that the 2024 yarn might be a squidge lighter. I think the difference is that the 2024 yarn isn't as lofty as the 2020 yarn. So it doesn't have that same kind of squishy feel to the knitting the way that this yarn does. And that to me was a big noticeable difference between the two skeins of yarn. Now, sometimes yarns, and this happens with my Lion Brand Basic Stitch yarn, sometimes a yarn will feel thinner and you'll work it up, but then when you wash it, it kind of fluffs up and becomes thicker and it grows a bit more. I was kind of curious if that would be the case with the 2024 yarn, that once I washed it, would it fluff up? And I've got to say, I didn't notice it fluffing up at all. It doesn't feel all that different to me when I look at it. So one of the big knocks against acrylic in terms of actual quality of fiber, all right, just talking about the qualities, characteristics of the fiber, I think one of the biggest knocks against acrylic is the fact that it pills so easily. What I did to kind of test the durability of the yarn is I did what I think of as like the scrub test. So I literally just take the swatch, bend it, and I just rub it together really hard like this to see how well it holds up. Now I did that with this one, and I don't know if you can see it here on camera, but there is quite a bit of fuzz, but it doesn't look terrible either. And after doing that, I didn't get like the little hard pills of yarn. So to me, this holds up pretty well. I mean, I wouldn't say this is bulletproof as maybe Red Heart Super Saver, but it holds up pretty well, my 2020 Big Twist. What about my 2024 Big Twist when I give it the abrasion test? I've got to say, I think this doesn't hold up as well. When I look at it, again, I'm not sure you're going to be able to see it, but I just see a lot more fuzzing up than I do my other swatch. Let's hold them up together. Like, I think the 2024 swatch looks more worn than the 2020 swatch. So I think there is a slight difference in the durability of my 2024 Big Twist yarn versus my 2020 Big Twist yarn. It's kind of another mark against it. So is Big Twist now a big bust? I don't know if I'd go that far. I don't think this is like completely crap yarn. I don't think this is like such terrible acrylic yarn like you would get as a freebie in a like the Centro Circular knitting machine, okay? I don't think it's that terrible a quality, but it's certainly not the same yarn that it was 4 years ago. But the only quality between these two yarns, between 2024 and 2020, that I think is the same, is the softness. Like, they feel the same to me. They are both next to the skin, soft, and you can't say that for all acrylic yarns, in my humble opinion. The fact of the matter is, acrylic yarn still to this day has a reputation of feeling scratchy and awful, all right? And I would not say either one of these feel that way. So that is my experience with Big Twist yarn. I am going to be keeping an eye on it over this coming year. You know, I do visit Joann's quite a few times, and when I do, I'm going to look at the Big Twist and keep looking at it and see what the eyeball test says to me. But if you were to ask me today, would I recommend this yarn? I would have to say, I mean, all I can say is it's acrylic yarn. It's nothing special now. And that's what's so disappointing to me about this is not special anymore. And it used to feel very special to me. But what about you? Do you have experience with Big Twist? Have you bought it more recently? Have you noticed a decline in the quality of this yarn? I would love to hear from you. I'd also love to hear from you what acrylic yarns you like or you would like me to review, because I actually really love doing these reviews and giving my opinion on all this stuff. Trust me, I'm a Sagittarius. There's nothing I love more than to give my opinion. That is it for me today. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If so, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your other knitting, crafting, yarn throwing friends. Liking videos, sharing videos, doing all the YouTubey things does help support my channel. And of course, please make sure that you are subscribed and you hit the notification bell. And even if you think you're subscribed, make sure you are actually subscribed, because I know myself, there are times I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not subscribed to this channel? How is that even possible? Like, what? And it turns out, like, they kept showing up in my feed, but I never hit subscribe. Make sure you hit subscribe. Again, thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you have a wonderful day, evening, weekend, weeknight, whenever you might be watching this. And as always, happy health and happy making. Bye! I don't even know how to start. Why am I blanking? I don't know. As we get into today's, I will say that earlier on in the sky, and I was fine of this. I will say that okay. All right. So if